you doing?
Digging.
Why?
Make a hole.
A hole for what?
More digging.
あとはシーウィンガーで奴を房総半島機の埋め立てエリアまで引きつけて待機したガンローダーで撃墜。地上戦で一気に叩く。
未来、お前のお兄さんの人形を持ってきてやったぞ。あれ？未来は？
ああ、さっき都内でマイナスエネルギーに似た波動が観測されたの。
与え物なんだよ、彼にとって。
What's up, everyone? I am the Kaiju no Kami, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Ultraman Mebius from 2006, which Mill Creek had just recently put on DVD. Before Gokaiger, before Kamen Rider Decade, there was Ultraman Mebius. To celebrate Ultraman's 40th anniversary, Tsuburaya made the decision to return the franchise to the universe the Showa era shows had been featured in. Part of this stemmed from the company being on the verge of bankruptcy, wanting to pull in as many viewers, new and old, as possible. Adding to that, they wanted Ultraman Mebius to act like a series finale to the franchise if the company should happen to fall apart. Is Ultraman Mebius a grandiose anniversary series worth watching? Or should you forget about this one? Let's find out. The heroes. Like with Ultraman Gaia, Mebius features 2 Ultra Heroes, on top of a variety of guest stars. Mebius himself is sent to Earth by Father of Ultra as a means of training to be a better person. On his way there, he witnessed a sacrificial soldier on a spaceship being sucked into an alternate dimension and failed to rescue him in time. He took up the likeness of this hero while naming himself Mirai Hibino in order to blend in with humanity and honor this fallen soldier.
Ultraman Mebius.
He joined the Earth's Defense Force, now known as Crew Guys, and strives to protect the planet as one of their soldiers. I will say that having the group called Guys does allow you to have quite a bit of fun with some of the show's dialogue.
一つでも多くの命を守るために俺たちはいる。ガイズがあるんだ。
Well, that's kind of sexist.
俺がバイクで踊りになる。マリダの彼女。
待って。それはガイズの仕事よ。
Yes, that's what he was saying. It's a job for guys.
そうよね。私たちが行かなきゃ。ガイズの名が廃るわ。
But I thought women love destroying the reputation of men. Oh, speaking of which, there's also this scene here when all of the male characters are injured.
任せてサコちゃん。女性の力見せてあげますわ。
In today's world, the insecure would all call this woke. Moving on, in the beginning of the series, all but one member of the Guys team is wiped out in battle by their first opponent, who is apparently the first monster the world has seen in 25 years. Thus, they've never had any real practice fighting monsters before. Mirai teams up with the sole survivor, Ryo Ayahara, to create a new team of Guys, but not before he gets chewed out for doing what pretty much every Ultraman ever has done.
バカ野郎！なんて下手くそな戦い方だ！兄を見てみやがれ！ それでもウルトラマンかよ！何も守れてねえじゃねえか！
Thank you. Finally, somebody said it. Their new team is the makings of a bad joke. We've got a motorcycle racer, a soccer player, a wannabe doctor, and a teacher. Although, I do really like the way Madara Kazuma, the motorcycle racer, talks about them to her friends.
でも仲間に一人もっとすごい子が一目見ただけで怪獣の名前とか特徴とか全部言えちゃうの。見えっ張りでプレイボーイの元サッカー選手でしょ。気が弱いけど頑張り屋さんのメガネっ子。
The soccer player is George Ikaruga.
当然新しい銃の機能を試したくなるだろ。3体の怪獣を同時に撃てる機械なんてそうはないからな。
Teppei Kuze is the wannabe doctor who also knows almost everything about anything in regard to the monsters who have shown up in the past.
バードンだって？ どうかしたのかね。バードンって確かウルトラマンの命を奪ったことのある怪獣。
And Konomi Amage is the name of our teacher member.
必ず勝てます。ウルトラマンも人間も仲間がいる限りどんな強敵にも勝てるんです。
All of these characters are played by Shunji Igarashi, Masaki Nishina, Ai Sakawa, Daisuke Watanabe, Kenta Uchino, and Misato Hirata. They were all handpicked by Mirai to be a part of Guys due to the bravery they displayed while rescuing Konomi's class from animals during the very first monster attack.
こいつらチョコマカと。はい。逃げてください。怪獣が迫ってます。早く逃げて。
この子たちはみんなで大事に育ててるんです。
Ryu was initially hesitant, believing that only trained soldiers were qualified to protect the world, which also stemmed from the loss of his idol and commander during the attack, while the others themselves questioned their ability to defend the world. However, it was quickly proven that they had what it took to be the new guys, and they all became a team just as much as they became friends. One of the things I like about these guys is everyone gets a couple of episodes to develop their character over the course of the first half of the show. Sadly, their development takes a backseat in the second, which may be the biggest detriment to Mebius. They were all a likable group who you want to see succeed. Thank the gods there were also no love relationships built between the crew in this one, as I had enough of that during Tiga, Dinah, and Gaia. The romantic relationships that are built are from outside members.
惚れた。
はあ？やっぱりいい男だわ。
I will say, Maruna may be my least favorite member of the team. I love her backstory of being a racer who strives to be the first woman to win some world championship race, and that she has a great sense of hearing, all of which is why she is chosen to be one of Guys' pilots. However, for as strong as a character as she appears to be, there is one episode where just out of the blue she starts freaking out and runs away from an alien that jumps in front of them.
何か来る。
This completely ruined her character for me. Worse, there was nothing to explain why she did this. She just did, and it is never brought up again. Teppei is funny because he tries to hide the fact that he is a member of Guys from his parents, a plot that backfires the moment he is interviewed on TV.
うわ、彼が今回の勝利の立役者です。ちょっと僕困るんですよ。
こういう謙虚なところも私の指導の賜物です。その通りです。
てっぺいさん。
The reasoning behind this is because one time his mother had a heart attack, so he tries to never do something strenuous in front of her.
だったらどうしてガイズにいるんだ。ガイズの仕事はいつも危険と隣り合わせだぜ。それは。
Plus, I love how enthused he will be whenever an infamous monster appears.
シーボーズだ。ドキュメント 3SP に記録のある亡霊怪獣。怪獣墓場だ。ウルトラゾーンは伝説の怪獣墓場に通じていたんですよ。
Konomi is the shyest member of the group, who also has some self-esteem issues due to her wearing glasses. She was often made fun of in school as a child for them, something she overcame thanks to a boy that befriended her, which drove her to being a teacher.
彼がくれた言葉はずっと変わることないもん。私にとって宝物だったもん。その言葉のおかげで私、保育士にもなれたし。
George is the one who becomes a team player last. His skills to score goals made him an outcast on his soccer team, so he was always berated by his cohorts.
俺の話を聞いてくれ。No, I don't want to listen to you. おい、お前たち。
This caused him to always try to accomplish a task on his own, which continued with his time in Guys given he was their best marksman.
話をすれば
みんなにわかることじゃないんですか。
どうして何も話してくれないんです。
He eventually finds his comfortability with this team and always wants to be there for them.
姿はいくつあってもあの光は一つだ。てか基本な。
As for Ryu, he is constantly trying to fill the shoes of his captain, who sacrificed himself during the premiere battle.
大丈夫。竜。ガイ
He's also very delusional on how an Ultra series works.
地球は我々人類自らの手で守り抜かなければならないんだ。けど地球はなぜかウルトラマンに守られてきた。俺はガイズをそうじゃないチームにしたいんだ。
I hate to be that guy, but that's not how an Ultra series works. There are 4 higher-ranking officials who assist our team. First up is the 70-year-old Commander Shingo Sakumizu, played by Minoru Tanaka.
わからないのが当たり前なんだ。だから分かってもらいたくて一生懸命伝えようとする。ただジョージみたいにあんまり長いこと理解されないとちょっときついだろうな。
Sakumizu is like the most laid-back leader ever, and it is hinted very early on that he knows Mariah's Mebius. There is also an interesting plot thread revealed about him towards the end of the show, of which you will have to experience for yourself. Next up is the adjutant for Gai's Japanese branch, Aide Toriyama, and his assistant Maru.
これを幸いと言わずして何を幸いというけんか。マル、私はもう寝るからね。では私も。
These two act as the show's comic relief, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't.
肩でもお見しましょう。
どんなに危険なものなのか私に教えていただけないでしょうか。
He's kind of an idiotic character with a good heart, so it is hard to hate him. There is one episode where Toriyama really starts to doubt himself until he is given inspiring words of encouragement from the constant absentee Inspector General. Finally, we have Yuki Masaki, the Deputy Inspector General who is always there to offer advice and support whenever needed.
ドキュメント MAC によれば、ウルトラマンレオは幾度も宇宙人や怪獣に敗れています。
Like with Sakumizu, it is shown that she may also know Marai's secret. Speaking of which, I have totally forgotten to talk about our titular hero. Marai transforms into Mebius using a bracelet, and he's what you would expect from an Ultra character. Strong-willed, always trying to save the day within his 3-minute time limit, and quick to anger if he doesn't win. One of the things I like about him over his brother is that he can utilize a sword in battle. He does have a couple of upgrade forms, one of which he gains about a quarter in. The second upgrade happens a little after the halfway point. As for his final form, he decides to rip off Kamen Rider Kuga and save it for the final battle. That's not the only thing he steals from Kamen Rider Kuga, as we see in one of the movies. Our second Ultraman is Hikari, who makes his grand entrance wearing some evil armor under the name of Tsurugi. Hikari spent quite some time on an alien planet that was destroyed by a monster that caused him to falter and set out on a quest of vengeance. His plotline is kind of reminiscent to Ultraman Gaia with the Ghoul's first appearance, where he acts more like an anti-hero as opposed to an actual hero, only his arc is concluded in the first 11 episodes. After that, he only shows up when he is truly needed as a full-blown hero. Also, because he needed to don the body of a human when on Earth, he chose to inhabit that of Ryu's commander, Serizawa, as his host. This choice plays in his favor as time goes on, for Serizawa's good heart heals his mental anguish. Based on what I learned about Hikari through later series, he is supposed to be a scientist, none of which is ever on display here. I think it could have been really ingenious had the series actually shown him making upgrades for Mebius and maybe even the members of Guys, as opposed to new weapons just showing up from time to time. Granted, how they went about it was fine, I just really think there was a lot of untapped potential revolving around Hikari's scientific background. On the subject of Guys' equipment, it's what you expect from an Ultra show. They mostly travel around by plane, all of which can combine into a bigger one similarly to those found in Ultra 7.
ガンフェニックススプリット
They They get an even more powerful attachment jet later on in the series.
Invincible Phoenix! Yes,
It is also revealed halfway through that their base of operations can also transform into a powerful battleship. To further their success, they have access to a system that lets them utilize Seven's capsule monsters of the past to help fight threats. At least Wyndham and Meekless. As the third one, whose name I can't remember, is forgotten. And probably for a good reason. Man, what was its name?
One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So that just happened.
On top of the capsule monsters, Guise is associated with a baby Ella King for its mascot.
リム。
リム？
ちっちゃいからリミテッド。略してリムです。
The guest stars of Mebius are staggering. First up, what would an anniversary series be without our infamous Ultra Brothers appearing? Everyone except Taro returns in human form, while Taro does make an appearance only in Ultra form. I also love how Leo forces Mebius to go through some extensive training the same way he did. I will say that Leo's actor seems to have aged the worst of the brothers. Of course, I'm sure anyone who had to go through the Moroboshi school of torture would be the same. There is an episode revolving around 80 that features his former classmates returning and wanting to give him a fine celebration.
みんな、先生には感謝しています。本当にありがとうございました。
I know when I reviewed Ultraman 80 and hated how the teaching plot was just dropped, people told me about this episode, and while I do think this was Tsuburaya's way of atoning for their blunder in 80, it doesn't excuse it. It still should have been resolved in the show it was fully a part of. Other guest actors include Kenji Sahara, reprising his role from Ultra 7. His marine biologist granddaughter and love interest to Mirai is played by Abure Yellow.
未来くん、今日なんか予定ある？
いえ、特に。
だったら付き合って。いいでしょ？未来くん、彼女とかいるの？
いません。
じゃあ好きな人は？
好きな人はいっぱいいます。
リュウさんに迫水隊長、それにガイズの皆さんは大好きですし、あやさんだって。
そういうんじゃなくて。
The creepy, arrogant bastard that was Kusaka in Kamen Rider 5 and Bard in Zyuohger returns here as a slightly toned-down, arrogant bastard.
ごめん。いや、先に連絡できりゃよかったんだけどさ、俺らも奴がどの辺に降りてくるのか全然わかんなかったんだよね。しかもなんかあいつすげえ飛び方すんじゃん。びっくりだよね。
We have Tiga, Dinah, and Gaia as Kei Shibashi here as an eccentric scientist who loves dancing. And hates coffee to the extreme.
52分前に飲んだでしょ。
意外としクールガイズの。
私の前では絶対飲まないでよね、コーヒー。
わかりました。楽しいからな。
And lastly, one of my favorite minor Toku actors, the great Soichiro Akaboshi.
全てをこのわしに任せるのじゃ。
The Monsters and Aliens. Mebius features a variety of new and old aliens and monsters. The main threat to Mebius is an evil emperor who sends a variety of aliens to the planet in the hopes of sending it into darkness. Thus, he is the one who ends up being the cause for most of Earth's tragedies that also occurred from the monster inhabitants that were aroused by his presence. A couple of new alien threats is a group of creatures called the Bogo, who evolve as the show progresses. We've also got Mephiles, the Yapul, who are finally explained,
ヤプールはもともと複数の意識が集合したものだから。
Babaru, and Nova. One of the more interesting new aliens who comes to Earth is this Aztec-looking statue that has 3 personalities, one for each head upon his body. He's a very interesting alien, and I wish more had been done with him beyond this episode. I would love to see him return in the new series as a central villain. The Phanton, who had a member heavily involved in X, also made their debut in this series. There's a new saucer alien that comes to Earth, who spots a wicked design. Oh, and this samurai dude is pretty damn awesome. Many of the kaiju we know and love are featured here, including Gamora, Red King, who is still not red, Ho, Gudon, Twintail, Bemstar, and Salamandra. Kelbeam is probably the coolest looking of the new monsters here. A few terrible monsters, or super beasts, from Ace Return. Overall, Mebius seems to have paved the way for the shows of the future that would feature a combination of new monsters on top of old ones. I do wish more had actually been done with Emperor, as it would have been nice if his presence had been developed across the entire series as opposed to the last 8 episodes, with most of those just having his 4 generals talk about him.
グローザムよ。皇帝の気まぐれは今に始まったことではありませんよ。ウルトラマンメビウスを倒し、地球を皇帝に献上してな。
The effects and music. Ultraman Mebius does a spectacular job at balancing CGI and practical effects while having a stellar soundtrack to boot. Yes, the CGI can still look a bit dicey, specifically with moments like this. Nevertheless, I never found it taking me out of an episode as it blended in quite well with the standard effects. The miniatures are absolutely outstanding, with many episodes featuring ones I found to be quite impressive. I do wish the camera work had been on equal footing, for most of the show doesn't do anything extraordinary in that regard. There's only 2 moments I found to be remarkable in cinematography, with the first belonging to when the Yapul was teasing Mirai through the bodies of bystanders.
苦しめて貴様は呪われているのだ。滅ぼされた者たちの恨み思い知るがいい。黙れ！
The second time was in an episode that featured Mephiles trying to get Mirai to leave the planet, which also saw a wonderful looking purple filter engulfing the screen. Still, there were a couple of impressive fights to be had, one of which was in the rain while another revolved around a night battle with fire. By now, you are probably sick of hearing me gushing over the work of composer Toshihiko Sahashi from my Gaia, Kuga, Agito, and Hibiki reviews. Well, tough. Because the man came back to work on this show's soundtrack and it is just as good as the aforementioned shows. I won't bore you with the details, instead just enjoy a sample of my favorite pieces.
寂しいと感じることさえ
The opening theme is performed by a band known as Project DMM and is a pretty good composition for the most part. It's not my favorite opening theme from Ultraman, but it does its job effectively. Like its Showa brethren, Mebius does not have an ending song. The episodes. One of the praises I have to give Mebius is that it knew how to tell a good story and play with your expectations. I can't really say there was an episode I hated, as they all had something to enjoy. Still, that doesn't mean the show didn't have moments of mediocrity, because I did feel the character development for our supporting cast just stopped shortly after the halfway point. Fortunately, there was a nice clever plot twist that occurred in episode 30 to keep you distracted from this notion, but it was still saddening to see the characters no longer receive an episode to flesh them out further. My least favorite episode would have to go to episode 12's, The First Errand. This episode is a constant string of comedy hijinks thanks to a mission Toriyama is assigned and ultimately fails at, which feels out of place with the tone of every other episode found throughout. The monster adversary is a giant Ibisu statue that is as dumb as it sounds. There's also some really bad, goofy music involved. My top favorite episode was really tough to decide, as there were quite a few contenders for being my favorite. One of those stories revolved around a callback to the racist Return of Ultraman episode where an injured, stranded alien is beaten to death by a gang of villagers.
彼が宇宙人だとした一部の地球人は恐怖のあまり彼を殺害してしまったのだ。無断で地球に入り込んだ我らにも確かに非はある。けれど命を奪われるほどの何を彼がしたというのか。
The next one on my list dealt with Maruna and a monster that could travel through time to feed. Another featured a samurai alien who comes to Earth to challenge Tsurugi. All in all, the one I chose to go with was Future Days. This one flashbacks to Mebius' first arrival on Earth and taking up a human guise as Mirai Hibino, visiting the man of the father whose form he took on.
なぜ君はその姿で私のところに来た?
僕は自分の死を厭わず、あなた方を助けようとしたヒロトさんの勇敢な行動に感動したんです。
It's a very touching episode that is enhanced by a creepy looking monster and comedic moments that hit. Plus, it shows that Sakomizu did indeed know that Mirai was Mebius before he even joined Guys at that point. The movies and specials. Mebius features a couple of tie-in movies and post-series specials. The first movie, Ultraman Mebius and Ultraman Brothers, kicks off with the backstory that 20 years ago, Ultraman 7, Ace, and Jack were stranded on Earth without their powers after a big confrontation with the Yapul. They learned to live amongst the humans until the Yapul freed itself from imprisonment and they had to help Mebius defeat him. The movie is pretty enjoyable, though I'm betting with the appearance of the previous Ultras for the first time in a few decades, this felt momentous to someone who was watching it as it premiered compared to what we have today, where every series since Mebius has featured the heroes of the past. Anyway, the CGI'd Ace Killersaurus looks quite good. This is also the first time we are introduced to Aiko Ito's character.
サコッチから頼まれたの。君の仕事を手伝ってくれって。
サコッチ？
迫水隊長。あの人の頼みじゃ断れないもんね。
On top of this weird blur motion scene that makes me think of something out of Time Ranger. And what would a movie be like without giving its titular hero a movie-specific upgrade form? I should also mention that this movie is best to be watched between discs 2 and 3, or at least before episode 24, if nothing else. Despite coming out in 2008, Superior 8 Ultra Brothers takes place during and after the events of the first film. It's set in an alternate universe where Ultraman is nothing more than a television show. Oh no. It's the Ultraman Gaia movie all over again, isn't it? Thankfully not! This one was also an entertaining film that was well paced and plotted. Three friends, Daigo, Asuka, and Gamu, instantly fall in love with Ultraman during its premiere in 1966 and make big dreams for themselves.
僕らは自然とウルトラマンへの憧れやときめきを忘れ去り、すっかり大人になっていた。
Proper adults? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Why do people assume that just because you grow up, you got to give up your soul? Why can you just not have fun as an adult like you did as a kid? Why does it have to be one or the other? Society is dumb. Anyway, Daigo finds himself teetering between his world and another, which is protected by Mebius. Mebius ends up getting pulled into Daigo's universe after having to sedate Gesura from his temper tantrum for not getting a chocolate bar. Emperor Palpatine reveals himself from the shadows. Causing Daigo and his friends to access the powers of the Ultra Brothers to become the respective defenders of the universe. Wait, go back. Seriously? Couldn't you have been more subtle about your product placement, Bandai? I mean, I'm all for product placement in movies since product placement exists in the real world, but it seems very on the nose when the only advertisements to be found in the entire city belong to Bandai. The other specials include a 3-part story on Hikari's adventures before and during the show. We get to see him become Tsurugi for the first time. On top of what he was doing off-world between his appearances. After that comes the two-parter Armored Darkness, which is set a year after the events of Mebius, so I dare not spoil anything for you. Finally, there is another two-parter deemed Ghost Rebirth. Ghost Rebirth ties into Mega Monster Battle, for it features a group of aliens wanting to acquire Belial's Battlenizer so they can resurrect their boss. Overall, the three specials are hardly enduring. Hikari's desire for vengeance in the series seems a bit much, because this special reveals he only knew the inhabitants of this doomed planet for like 10 minutes. Armored Darkness does have a cool sword fight. While Ghost Rebirth was just an atrocity to watch. Not only is it even more boring than Armored Darkness was, but the green screen background is quite bad on top of how artificial the lighting looks. Everything looks so unnatural. Lastly, Ace Killer talks like a normal being. Say what? The DVD and Blu-ray. So we got two releases here. The Mebius TV series, movie and specials on DVD, and the other movie Superior 8 Ultra Brothers on Blu-ray. Now, looking at Ultraman Mebius, you might notice something weird compared to the other Ultra releases. There's no slipcase. There's no slip box or anything. It's just the case itself with the actual stuff, which kind of sucks when you have it on your entire shelf and you have this one that's just a case. Now I will give them some credit because they did actually put artwork on the reverse side that does match the artwork for the other releases, so if you take them out of their slipcases, it will match. Otherwise, it doesn't. It is still cool though. Now, you've got your discs, 6 discs for the series, the booklet that has information on the series for it, and then the episode descriptions and monsters. Now, there is one other thing I will mention about this, but first, let me cover the Blu-ray, which does have a slipcase. We have the movie, and a single disc for the movie, which is kind of cool. Now, when you take this cover, something you might notice about this. Let's look at these right here. We've got Mebius, the movie, Ghost Rebirth, Armored Darkness, and Hikari Saga listed. I don't know why, but the listing of the specials on the back of the case is completely jacked up. First of all, they've got the 3 specials backwards, for Ghost Rebirth is actually the last special you should be watching, while Hikari Saga is the first. To make it even more confusing, they also reversed the descriptions for Ghost Rebirth and Armored Darkness while also giving incorrect stats. It says Ghost Rebirth is in 5.1 surround sound when it is in fact only standard stereo. Thankfully, the video and audio presentation itself shows more competence compared to the packaging. Audio is solid throughout the entire show, as I noticed no distortions or dropouts of any kind. For the most part, the video is equally as good with very little in the way of compression, if there was any at all. The biggest issue with the video comes from the final episode of the series, for there was this wavy line effect going on during the battle scenes to the first half of the episode.
今のお前はもうだけどこのままじゃ今のお前はもうだけどこのままじゃ
I have no idea what is going on there, but on a 50-inch TV, it looks really bad. Subtitle translations are adequate, with this one bit being the only time I noticed anything truly wrong grammatically. I'm sorry, Thank you for what now? Spelling remains inconsistent with other Ultra releases. The creatures from Ace are actually listed in the booklet as terrible monsters, which is what JoJo was translated to in that show, only for the subtitles in Mebius to translate them as super beasts. I'd probably also say the subtitle font in Ghost Rebirth is terrible looking compared to the subs for the rest of the series. The opening theme for the series itself is the only time a piece of music is ever subbed. None of the songs on the final disc are translated, nor are the Mebius navigation segments that follow the next episode previews that talk about the history of the show's characters or something.
ガンフェニックストライカーはガンウィンガー、ガンローダー、ガンブースターの3機合体形態。
As for Superior 8 Ultra Brothers, it looks and sounds as spectacular as you would expect a Blu-ray movie from 2008 to be. The 5.1 is nice and clear, though I don't recall my subwoofer getting too much of a workout from the bass as I watched the film. Sadly, there are no bonus features at all for the movie. Overall, Ultraman Mebius was a spectacular series that did a great job of kicking off the anniversary tropes that every Toku series would follow henceforth. It also knew how to balance nostalgia and new concepts with only the occasional falter. Thus, Ultraman Mebius receives a well-deserved 4 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. If you are a fan of the Showa era and have completed every series, I highly recommend bookending your achievement with Mebius. It has a lot of great callbacks and makes my personal suffering of Ace and 80 well worth it. Until next time, bye.
Digging for anything in particular?
Nuh-uh.